Welcome to the Goddess Conjurer Podcast and Show. I'm Christina Margaret, a holistic empowerment and sobriety coach. I'm also a spiritual badass and truth seeker. Join me as I chat with wicked guests who are down to get real with raw, unfiltered conversations inspired to help you level up your spiritual and personal expansion. So settle in, get cozy, get ready, and let's enjoy the ride. Hi guys, welcome to the Goddess Conjurer Podcast and Show. I'm your host, Christina Margaret. And today, after a bit of a hiatus from podcasting, I don't know where I've been, I have a beautiful guest with me. She is my teacher and my mentor and one day long friend, I hope. Beverly Sartain. She's coming in all the way from Jacksonville, Florida. She is a PCC level coach. She's a coach educator. She trains professional coaches with a holistic approach using mind, body, spirit. And she is part of She Recovers, which is a huge organization that I am just about a part of myself. So hi, Bev. Thanks for being here today.
It's so good to be here with you and to have this conversation. So thanks for having me.
Well, no problem. It's my pleasure. You were kind enough to have me on your podcast a few months ago, and that was really lovely. And I will be putting all of that stuff in the show notes for people to check out where you are, how to find you, and all of that at the end of our chat today. I really just wanted to talk about life with you today. I wanted to learn about your journey into recovery. And I know that you have studied spiritual psychology, which I think is absolutely incredibly intriguing to me. And so I'd love to know more about that too. So where did it all begin for you?
It all began when I was 26. I think that's where there was a breakdown and a turning point. So I always like to start off there because I feel like that's where things broke down for me. But I always say that's where the breakthrough also came in. And what was happening at that time was that I was working at a nonprofit domestic violence shelter. And doing nonprofit work and really using my work as a way to feel worthy about myself and good enough about myself. And I had a realization that I was helping other people and not willing to help myself. And I think that was the start of a deep exploration. But it wasn't so smooth sailing from there. It was really like there was a big breakdown that happened. I always used work to feel like I was high functioning and that I was, maintaining and sustaining. But I really wasn't. I was going home and I was drinking every day. I had been using drugs on and off. Probably in college was my heaviest drug use. And then at this point, when I was 26, it was more drinking, but then using drugs every once in a while. But it was really starting to affect my mental health. So I had been at that point diagnosed with almost every anxiety disorder that there is. And
I get that one.
Yep. And starting to not do as well at work. And that was, and then I lost a relationship. I had somebody that I was really close to, one of my boyfriends, and he ended the relationship with me because of my behaviors. And so that was a really tough blow. So I was, having consequences. I had a DUI a few years before that. My dad had died of cirrhosis of the liver a few years before that. So it's kind of like this culmination of grief and unresolved trauma that I had not been wanting to look at. And so it came to a head and I found myself having suicidal ideations, and reached out actually to that past boyfriend, and he set up a therapy session for me. And that is when my journey began.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. course.
That's intense. I know it can be hard to like relive those parts of our story.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, not a problem. That part's actually not the hardest. Like for me, always the harder is my childhood trauma, which I don't really talk about as much.
Yeah.
For me, the turning point, even though it was heavy, it was also where the light came in. And so I always actually enjoy thinking about that because I almost didn't make it. And so I was really at this crossroads. I really was of, do I choose to live or do I just choose to die now? And luckily there was enough hope for me. And I had always connected to this potential inside of me. And that was kind of always the driving force, as I knew I had a lot of potential. I had always had a lot of potential through my childhood and younger years. And so I just wanted to realize this potential that I had inside of myself. And that commitment to actualization is what actually drove my recovery process and now my business and all these other things. So yeah.
I definitely relate to that. Mm-hmm. I think without like having that inside knowing, like of being more, even though everything leading up to knowing that I was going to pursue my more told me I wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. It's definitely life-changing. And I totally can see and agree with you on, you know, sharing that part of the story where, you had the inspiration. That's the inspiration for people, is when they hear like that in those lowest moments that you pull yourself out.
It is so inspiring. Like, that's why I'm saying to you, like, even sharing it with you and whoever's listening right now, it's knowing how bad it was and that so much goodness has been created even out of those hardships and darkest moments.
Yeah. So important. And I think that actually, if we jumped into this idea of She Recovers a little, I just finished handing in my units. So I'm really excited about that. But for anyone who doesn't know, She Recovers is an organization that's actually Canadian, which is so weird that we have ended up together like this, that doesn't model a traditional 12-step recovery program. And it also helps women who are in recovery from anything and everything. And their slogan is, we're all recovering from something, which is super amazing and profound. And I think and I completely forgot what I was going to say that had to do with what we were talking about, of course, which is just exactly how my brain rolls these days. And so hopefully it'll come back around to me, but
it's all good. Yeah.
Where were we?
We were talking about my past story and just the darkness, and that there's inspiration through that breakdown. And then you wanted to bring in She Recovers. Yeah,
that was a great idea that I had there. It's totally vanished. Obviously, my tea needs to kick in fully still.
It's all good.
I think what I was trying to get at there is that there's so many inspiring stories within that model of not being anonymous. That's what I wanted to say, is that in that model, they want women to share their stories of recovery. And so when we have those traditional systems, those 12-step systems, there's this idea of being anonymous within those. And that isn't what is really helping others heal. It's what really gives women the opportunity to heal is the opportunity to speak our truth out loud and to share our stories so that we can see ourselves in each other and feel inspired enough to change our own lives.
That's it. And I never was connected to a 12-step program or going to meetings, so I wasn't connected to more of those mainstream ways of recovery. And so that's one of the reasons I really have connected with She Recovers too. I love that we're all recovering from something. And I love that the recovery is a patchwork of different things, which is exactly what my recovery has been. It started off
Totally.
with therapy. There's been a lot of body work. There's been spiritual psychology. There's been like all these different things that have come together for me. And it wasn't just one thing. It was a lot of things that I needed to resolve the childhood trauma, the mental health, the substances, the codependency, the perfectionism, the workaholism, all these things, you know. So I really appreciate their guiding principles. Yeah.
Well, it really does speak to, you know, the depth of who we are, and that we're not this black and white. And I find that, you know, addiction mirrors that idea of black and white, right or wrong, so much. And we get stuck in those patterns of thinking. And that's actually what keeps us in our cycles. And same with a lot of the 12, and I don't want to like shit all over 12 steps, because it's great for so many people. I've been really honest and open on this show and this podcast and in life that it's not for me, and that I don't think it's that great for women. But there's just that black and white thinking that shows up in there. And so we are vast creatures, and that we need to heal the layers of pieces of which we are. And so I think it's really wonderful to just see the expansion that's taking place when it comes to the idea of recovery and sobriety for everyone now in the world. And it doesn't have to look one way.
Yeah. And that's why I really, you know, like holistic recovery, because when, you know, I was 6 months sober when spiritual psychology came in for me. And what I loved about that was learning the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical level. And so even healing on those different levels, like I just said, like I had to do a lot of body work in terms of my past traumas. That was really on the physical level for me, even though that was also emotional and also spiritual and also mental. But there are layers to our healing. It's not just linear. It's not just a one-time, you know, it's a process, not an event. So I loved learning these different levels, and we're not always at the same level for all of them. Like we might advance greatly in our mental and emotional healing and not have advanced that much in our physical healing. And so that's been my experience, where I had to then spend some more very, you know, focused time on doing body work, because I was healing faster on some of the other layers. And I was noticing that my physical body was taking longer to grieve or let go and like get up to speed with some of the other levels.
Yeah, the body can really hold on to things for a long time. And like we often have to revisit things that we think like we really nailed it last time on the healing. Right. And then all of a sudden, oh, guess what's back? Like personally, for the last month, especially, my mental health has been struggling so much. She just had some personal things going on that really have showed up physically for me. And like, that's how I know that I need some extra care right now. And then it's time for me to step back in a few areas of my life and revisit those wounds and see what needs to be, you know, healed right now. And my body is really asking for some care at this point. So it's interesting to have the awareness, and I'm so grateful to have the awareness to give myself what I actually need now. Whereas the old pieces of me wouldn't have been able to work through or heal this uncomfortableness that I've been sitting in for the last few weeks. And I would go and drink. This would be a perfect opportunity for me to have a binge drink and party, because it's an instant relief that will create more chaos. But I know that behavior and that these symptoms are some of the driving force towards that Band-Aid.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that and being so honest about it. And I acknowledge you for keeping yourself in environments where you're around other people that can support you and love you even when these moments come up. So I think that's a wonderful thing too.
My environment has changed so much. Like that's, I think people struggle with that so much when it comes to recovery, is the friendship group.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, when I look back, the people that I spent my time with in those situations, that wasn't a friendship. We were all just mirroring each other's pain and trauma and need to escape. And so the people that have fallen off in that sense, I'm okay with it. There's nothing there that misses that, because it wasn't authentic. And I would much rather focus on quality over quantity at this point in my life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've always been somebody who, I'm quite introverted, and I actually really enjoy being alone. So I've always had very few friends, but the friends that I had were good friends.
Yeah, I'm an introvert extrovert, I think. Like, I love being out, like I love going wild, and I love being around people, but I also am a lone wolf. Like, and I have a lot of friends and acquaintances, but like, I don't really do a lot of shit with people. Like, I'm pretty focused on like myself these days, and I like that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it.
I like that. I think that people are all want me to do stuff, but I'm like, I don't know, the idea of it always sounds good, but I could be reading this book at home, or I could be working on that project that I'm doing, like, I don't know. I like myself now. And I think that's different too, right? Yeah.
You can be
spending time alone and spending time with myself isn't bad anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which is cool.
It is. What a great thing to say. Yeah.
Because before it would be like, I would just escape into anybody. I didn't give a shit like who it was, right? It's just all a distraction. And there's no need for that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how long have you been a part of She Recovers? How long have you been sober? Not to layer questions, but
it's been 16 years now.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. 4/13/2006.
4/13.
So 16.
That's close to my first sobriety date.
Yeah.
January, February, March, April. Dude, I think that's like literally really close to my first time sobriety date, but it was like 2012, I think, or something. No, 2014. I stayed on a little longer.
You did. Yeah, that was when I was done.
Yeah.
And it's been wonderful because like even my marriage with Richard has been sober. So
like
when
the whole thing.
The whole thing. So
is he sober living as well?
Yeah. When I met him,
cool.
When I met him, I was 28 and he was 21. He was just turning 22.
Oh, he's just a baby. You got a younger man.
And then I said to him the first day that we met, because there was a very strong, like, instantaneous connection. And so I was just kind of like, this is where I'm at. I'm 1.5 years sober. I can't deal with anybody coming home high or with beer on their breath, or it's just not going to work for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I totally understand that this might not be where you're at in your life. But if we're going to, do this and be together, then I need to be with somebody who's sober. And he said,
yeah,
okay. And
it's totally non-negotiable for me now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's such a weird process too, right?
Yeah.
And totally. And my relationship, we were not sober together, right? We met when I was 24, and like, yeah, it was a fucking shit storm for a long time. So I'll save that for the book.
Right.
Like, AKA my journal. Like, no one's ever going to fucking read all of that shit.
Yeah.
Those who know. But yeah, it's been hard. It's been really hard, but like a sober life together is incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We always say like there's no way we could have created all the things that we've created if
that's what I think all the time.
hungover or
oh my gosh,
probably all the fights we would have had, just,
Yeah.
there's just so many things that would have made.
You actually have a quality of life.
Exactly.
Yeah. We really learned the hard way there, and I try never to go into like places of regret, because I'm very trauma informed, and I understand how that two traumatized people were trying to live a normal life. Mm-hmm. And it really wasn't possible with the amount of childhood trauma that we've both like compounded. And, trauma just layers more trauma if you stay in toxic lifestyles, and you never know where to start. And I think that's what stops so many people's recovery, is that the trauma just becomes layered, and you don't know where to start.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. I mean, for me, that was the main issue, was the unresolved trauma. Mm-hmm. And then I kept having really bad relationships because I wasn't being healthy in relationships either. Yeah. And then I was attracting people that were not healthy either, or just, mm-hmm. Were dealing with their own things.
Yeah, it's just a big mirror.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so for me, having a healthy relationship, it was probably my number one thing. Like, over a career, over money, I just wanted to have a healthy relationship. And I felt like if I could have a healthy relationship with an intimate partner, like that felt successful to me. Like that felt like success.
It is.
Yeah.
We're not taught to have healthy relationships. Yeah. We're taught to settle, right? We're taught to put up with toxicity because family is everything. We have, and I don't know, for me, like my childhood trauma is a result of my family. And so like, that's a mind fuck in itself, because you're taught nothing is safe outside of these family units, yet being in this family is not safe. So the psychological warfare that takes place in the mind of a child.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So damaging.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I grew up in a domestic violence situation with my mom and dad. My parents were from a different country, so we were very isolated in that way. I didn't have my grandma or aunts and uncles or cousins or any connection to my family because they all lived in a different country. And so it was already very isolating. And then to be in that kind of a situation. And my dad being an alcoholic and just what that all did to our family. Yeah. And so for me, I've not been very connected to family, meaning having my own family. Like to me, Richard is my family. I do have connection with my mom and my brother and my sister. But I don't have that connection to what.
It's not deep.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No.
Because you've created something so beautiful and authentic within your actual relationship intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am the black sheep of my family because I'm the one that says the truth that nobody wants to still deal with. Mm-hmm. So I'm really fine wearing that jacket around.
That's awesome.
Like it's more uncomfortable for them than it is for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just still show up. I'm like a bad rash that just keeps showing back up for them, I'm sure.
What's interesting about my family is there's estrangement in my family. So my brother and sister and mom haven't talked in many years. It's been, I think, 20 years.
We have things like that too.
Yeah. So, and I've always been the one in the middle. So I have relationship with my mom. I have good relationship with my brother and sister. The siblings all have relationship with one another, but my brother and my mom and my sister have estrangement, and it's like an ancestral thing. There's been estrangement in the family for a long time. And again, just something that makes having a family difficult. Like, I can't remember the last time that I had a Thanksgiving or a Christmas and I was with my family because they can't be around each other. When Richard and I got married, we just eloped in Key West because we didn't want to invite these people that we would have to be looking over our shoulder and say, like, what are they doing? Are they talking? Are they fighting? So there's
like good for you for actually
things.
having those boundaries though, in a sense, right? Whereas like I know that parts of my family are just like, continue to ignore that there's problems and let's just carry on like nothing's actually happening. And so I'm like the person that brings the family together for like dinners and gatherings and things. And it's always like, oh God, like only some of us can get together because there's just like, again, there's people that aren't allowed around and like, I hate it. And my husband has more of an attachment and like, he don't listen to my podcast or anything. So it's because he has more healing to do that he's not doing. Sorry. And you know, like there's still this attachment to like this idea of families. Oh, we have to invite them because they're mom and we have to invite them because, you know, and it's like, we don't have to fucking invite anybody. Like, when are you going to move into the woods with me and figure it out? Because that's where I'm at with the whole society at this point.
I hear you.
Yeah. Things are hard collectively, let alone like within our own family units. So
well, I think that's why it's so challenging, because what you're saying, it's like, if we can't even figure it out with the people closest to us.
Yeah. How the fuck are we supposed to figure it out in the world?
With all of us. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it is so confusing and disheartening because it can be so challenging with the ones we love. And then we see it reflected back in the collective.
Oh, it's to not see the sickness that's taking place and that people are still unaware, heads buried in sand, you know? I can't live like that anymore. And I could live like that if I stepped out of sobriety. And I think that a lot of people are using that medicine every day.
Yeah. Just to survive and get by.
It's just survival. It's just coping, right? I just like, I can't live my life like that. I want so much for myself, for my children. I have children, like whose idea was that? Like if I understood what takes place, you know, if I understood trauma, it would have been like, I love like my kids, but like I owe it to them. I owe it to them to have my shit together. And so their life is valuable to me, but I also want them to know from themselves that they have value and that their life is valuable. And that's up to me to represent, right? That's up to me to show up as a real role model, not just as someone who had kids.
That's right.
And, oh, sorry, figure it out. We all have trauma. We all have shit. Like, I can't do it.
Well, I think that's wonderful. You know, for me, like when I see moms, dads, parents that get sober and really become the demonstration of their values to their kids, I honor it so much because I didn't have it.
Me too. I grew up in an alcoholic home. My dad still like boasts about about drinking. It's weird and uncomfortable. Like when you go there and he brags about it. And I've literally written in a published book how being at home with in an alcoholic family was like eating shame for dinner. You know, and my mom has read the chapter that I wrote in the book, and she said she liked the story that I wrote.
Right.
Bitch, that was life. It was not a fairy tale. Yeah. Like it's hard because you love them, but it's just, it's a hard one. So can you talk about spiritual psychology?
Yeah.
It's really fascinating to me.
Yeah. And I think you also wanted to talk about She Recovers. We kind of just went down my recovery date and that. So we can,
Yeah. When did you become a part of them?
So She Recovers, at the beginning of my business. So Dawn, who's one of the co-founders, she did the same training, recovery coach training that I did with Crossroads. And
Right.
so not at the same time, but we had done the same recovery coach training. So there was just a commonality there. We knew some of the same people. And then when I started my business, we would connect from time to time. And she just was always so uplifting to me, which I appreciated so much, like always willing to lift me up, always willing to think about me. And so I just became connected with them. And as they started to train coaches and acted as a mentor coach, and I'm still connected with them and support them. And, went to their event in 2018 in LA and got to speak from the stage there on a panel. And then this year we exhibited with Holistic Coach Training Institute there. So yeah, it's been a relationship that has been cultivated and developed. And I just love how they're willing to lift other women up.
Yeah.
And that's always what
I like have chills while you're talking, because I am so excited to be able to become a part of this organization. Like, I'll be like overly checking my inbox, I'm sure, for the next like week or two until I hear back. But it's like, it's the depth of work speaks to me. So it's everything. It's real. It's like, yeah, when I was doing the units, I was just like, it was effortless to put in my feedback, to put in my reflections on, the hand-ins, like,
yeah, well, this is the work you've been doing.
Yeah. It's just insane. Like the alignment, I think it's just the alignment,
Yeah. And they do retreats. They do a lot of similar work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
It's really exciting. Well, we're definitely going to be able to meet one day because of this, I'm sure.
We are.
Except for whenever I'm allowed on a plane again, because I am on the no-fly list because of my vaccination status as a Canadian. So that's a whole fight that's got me up in arms probably the last few weeks, especially too, as we were just denied access to planes and trains again.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, only Canada, China, and North Korea won't allow their citizens to fly. So what does that say? Not a lot of freedom happening here in our free country right now. And there's probably 6 to 8 million Canadians not allowed, that are unvaccinated, that are not allowed to fly. We weren't even allowed in restaurants up until a few months ago.
Wow.
I think it was April. It was the weekend of my last retreat.
Yeah, I know a Canadian, I believe she just moved from Canada to the States.
Oh yeah, I know tons of people. People are all going where you are. Everyone's going to Florida.
I think she came to Florida. I do believe that too.
Yeah. So like we can drive across the border, I'll tell you, like, I hate flying. I actually hate it. So like, I don't even care, because I'll just drive across the border, like if I have to, but like, it's just like I want to have the same rights as all the other citizens in our country. And because of a personal choice that I made for my medical sovereignty is being discriminated against is absolutely complete insanity. So that is something that's just a whole podcast in itself. And I just, I'm grateful because of the people who have come into my life because of this. And we've been able to kind of come together and speak together and have that truth together. But it's been really difficult the last year, especially. There's been so much pressure and so much negativity and lies put out towards like what type of people we are, hence. And yeah, it's been really hard. But anyways, I'll be driving across for something. I could drive to the States and then fly from Seattle anywhere anyways, right? So it's crazy. So you just went to the New York, where was the...
Yeah, I didn't go to the New York one. That was the first one that they did. Then they did an LA one in 2018. And then because of COVID, they weren't able to do the Miami one until this year.
Oh, so it was just in Florida as well.
It was. So
Cool.
We drove down and set up our booth. It was our first time doing an exhibition booth, and that was really a great experience.
Yeah. So much great things to come. So tell us about spiritual psychology. I know that you've written a book on it, which I haven't purchased yet. Sorry, haven't got there. You've been keeping me too busy with schooling.
It's all good. I wrote a book about my application of spiritual psychology. So for me, it's like, if people want to learn spiritual psychology, I did that through the University of Santa Monica with Drs. Ron and Mary Holnick. They are the people that created the curriculum of spiritual psychology. So, and they're still around. So if people are interested in,
I tried researching it actually, but it all came up as church, like through the churches. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that doesn't seem right to me.
I'm not a church person.
Dealing with. I didn't think so. But then I was like, So I think I was just Googling, maybe I was Googling like the abbreviations or something for it. And that's why it was coming up.
Well, there's like more people doing spiritual psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've noticed there's more things popping up that
of course it'll become a thing, right?
So I think that's been going on more and more, but they've been around, I think, for over 30 years now.
Oh, that's cool.
And doing this particular curriculum. So it's really just about conscious awakening. I mean, that's what the spiritual psychology is about. Right. And that's why it was so helpful for me, because when I received spiritual psychology, I was at that place, like I had shared at the beginning, where my way of living wasn't working and I needed to find a new way of living and being. And the way I was being with myself wasn't working. And that was kind of the ultimate thing that I realized through my recovery process, is that my self-talk and all of the misunderstandings from my childhood, I hadn't resolved those or let those go. So I needed to look at those things, because I was still buying into, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm damaged, I'm
the story.
Right. Like that was in my consciousness. And so I was just punishing myself and self-destructing, because that was the narrative that was going on in my head. And so I very quickly realized, I'm not going to stay sober if I don't resolve this narrative in my
totally. This is the root, right?
Exactly.
Like keep putting band-aids on it and it's going to fester.
And that's that. I'm so glad that I had that awareness. At 26, that I needed to resolve this story. And luckily, like spiritual psychology gave me those tools. And that's how I was able to do it. So really, they talk a lot about misunderstandings, unresolved issues, but in the consciousness. And then it becomes, what are those misunderstandings? And do you want to let go of those misunderstandings? So they talk about—
It's really similar to shadow work.
Yeah, they talk about victim consciousness versus creator consciousness. And that terminology was really useful for me, because I realized I had been just living in victim
in my victim. Totally. This really resonates.
And so there's a lot of paradigms that they have that, how you react to the issue is the issue. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, your outer experience is a reflection of inner reality. Like
how you react to the issue is the issue.
That one was a light bulb moment for me, because
right?
Exactly.
Like that's just it. It's just it right there.
Yep. Because what I was doing was going into victim consciousness. That was always my reaction.
Same. That's what I did. I recognize it the most in my relationship, right? Of like all the things that were happening to me, like, and within all addiction and bullshit, but like all the things that are happening to me, and like, okay, well, where's my responsibility for myself? Right? Like what role you've got it, you're playing a role. And it was the victim.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so they have a lot of these things about personal responsibility and ownership. And So I was just, like I say in the book, I was ripe and ready for a new way of being. And that's what spiritual psychology gave me. It gave me new principles, new paradigms, and those were better things for my consciousness to think about and marinate on, because they helped me resolve some of these old misunderstandings. And so now it's just like, people are always like, how are you creating all this? And how are you doing all these things? And I just told them, like, I don't have a lot of misunderstandings in my consciousness anymore.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the road is just open. Like
the disbelief is no longer in existence.
Yes.
I feel the same way.
Out of the way, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, now it's just creative expression that's coming through me and being expressed into the world. And it's so enjoyable, but I had a lot of heavy lifting to do for a long time to resolve all these things that were there. And it's not that something doesn't come up every once in a while, but one of the main skills I learned through them was the self-forgiveness. So they have like a specific
I have that tab open in my Google right now.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Literally, it's open. That's so funny.
Yeah. So that was probably the best tool that I received, because what I like about the spiritual psychology is, again, it resolves it on the spiritual level. It's not just a mental flip. It's not just a mental reframe, which is what we can sometimes do when we're counseling or doing therapy. And I have found it didn't stick. It didn't fully last. But when I learned this self-forgiveness through spiritual psychology, it was like pulling out the weed on the spiritual level and really letting that go once and for all. Exactly. Yeah. And then from there, having the thoughts and the feelings that are now in alignment of what I want to be, what I want to create, how I want to show up in the world. So I really shifted from my humanness and my ego, which is what I think I had been living from those 26 first years. And then when I got that realization of, I'm not my humanness, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, that shifted everything for me, because I was able to drop the shame. I was able to look at what the misunderstandings were and just look for the learning and realize that my soul is just on this journey. And there was a lot of hardships in the childhood, but really those hardships were meant to wake me up. Yeah. And now I can look at it all that way. And
how does this become an opportunity for me?
That's it.
Yeah. So. Self-forgiveness is a really hard one. It's one that I still work through a lot, especially when it comes to parenting and forgiving myself for the places that I was at, during the beginning parts of my child. Like I always say, like I had my first son when I was 26, and I say like he saved my life, because I really did start. I tried starting the journey a couple of times, like from 2021 is like when I hit one of my bottoms. There's been a few. And, but having him really started to shift and change things for me, but I was still carrying around so much belief about myself, and I was still so in my ego. And, it wasn't until 2014, and that was after my second son was born, that I had my first real shift into like, holy fuck, what are you doing? Right? Like, how are you raising these people? Look at how you're treating yourself. Just like, it did take a lot of heavy lifting. And, I was sober 2.5 years. And then I was almost 3 years drinking again. So now I'm 2.5 years sober again, but from such a different place, because I've dived into the shadow. I've gone into the depths. I'm at the roots. And the first time was like this all or nothing, black and white idea or model that I was using. And I learned a lot, and I realized a lot of my potential and value in that time. And it played a role. But things are so different. Like my level of growth now and the person that I am has shifted so much. And I have so much more compassion for myself. And I would say that's been the biggest game changer. That's what's given me an ability to even step into a place of self-forgiveness.
Yes.
And I have great kids and I have a great relationship with them. And if I'm open to my spiritual self being here, then I also have an understanding that we're all here on this like signed contract spiritually together, that this was all meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And, this healing is beyond me and it's beyond this life. And so that's come with the healing. That's come with awareness. That's come with presence and time.
Yeah. They talk about spiritual curriculum in spiritual psychology, which I love. I even love thinking about that when I'm coaching people. Like, I don't know what people's spiritual curriculum is. I don't know how many times somebody's supposed to go back out there and maybe use again. I don't know if it's, meant to be that they resolve their recovery.
I've been thinking about this a lot.
Yeah. So it's
the last little bit.
That helps me though, to just remember, like, I don't need to get anybody anywhere. I just need to be with them, because we all have our own spiritual curriculum that we're working out. And that helps me have more compassion for myself and for other people when I think about it that way.
And it allows us to let go, right? I've struggled deeply with codependency, total trait of alcohol, family, right? And the shoulds of how you should be in your family and what's important. And that allows you permission. It's permission to let go. This isn't your journey. This is my journey. This is your journey. This is not our journey together. Right. And like, we may be connected interdimensionally, spiritually, in our human experience. We may have had lifetimes together before. We don't know, but we don't have a responsibility for others' journeys to the level that we believe that we do when we are raised to be codependent.
Yeah. From the humanness.
Yeah.
I love what you're sharing, because when I can look through it more through the spiritual lens, then I can let go. And when I look through it from the humanist lens, then we can see why we're more codependent.
It's the attachment to the stories, which is why we continue to practice non-attachment, presence, and awareness. Yeah. Cool stuff. It's so amazing. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
So how do people find you? What are your offerings? I know that you are, obviously you have a school that I've stumbled across randomly. So, tell the listeners, what you have to offer. You're not on Instagram, which makes me so sad. Because like,
doesn't make me sad.
That's my place.
That's not my place.
I have to like remember how to spell LinkedIn every single time I want to find you.
Yeah.
Drives me crazy.
That's totally my place.
I know.
Which is great, right? I mean, like, you like
Good.
Instagram's your place and maybe your people are there. And, I always feel just that kinship with the service providers, the social workers, the clinicians.
I'm learning to get there.
I went from substance abuse counselor to coach. And so I always feel like those are kind of my people working at.
It's actually a great platform. I'm like,
it is
it's like completely new to me, because I carried a self-belief for a long time that I was not a professional human being, that I had no worth. I had no place there.
Misunderstanding.
Yeah. I like to call it bullshit.
Bullshit.
But yeah.
That's my loving way of saying it.
But misunderstanding.
But as far as where people can find me, I mean, honestly, I love coaching. And so that's what I'm helping people with. I always say that spiritual psychology gave me my healing, and coaching is what has helped me thrive and actualize. And so I feel very called to share coaching with people, because I think it is the way that we move from coping to healing to thriving.
Yeah. It's incredible. You're an incredible coach. And if you check out Bev's podcast, you'll see that she does a mix of either interviewing people or coaching people live. So you can, if you're kind of new to coaching or you're interested or curious, it's a great place to get a feel for what a coaching session looks like, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. A lot of people like listening to that.
Yeah.
Just to hear what coaching sounds like. So you can find us on holisticcoachtraininginstitute.com. That's our website. And so we have some different ways that we train coaches. And then we're growing a community now of holistic coaches, healers, practitioners, which I really love too, because I love lifting other people up. And so I like building this community where people can share their offerings, their work, and we can just all work on lifting each other up, because there's so many people that need love and support out there. And we all have different niches, different styles, different ways of doing this. And so instead of being competitive amongst one another, it's working together so that we can reach more people. And then of course, LinkedIn is a great place to find me. My Holistic Coach Legacy podcast is a great place to go to.
Awesome. Well, I'll be posting all of those links in the show notes. And I so appreciate your time this morning. It's pouring rain here again.
Nice.
Pouring.
I love rain.
Oh, well, move to the West Coast because there's no shortage, especially this year. It's been great talking to you. And I just appreciate you so much as a human. And I'm very grateful for the universe for bringing you into my realm and me into yours. So thank you.
I feel the same, Christina. And I feel like our relationship's going to continue to grow, and I'm absolutely here for it. So thanks for having me.
Me too. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for listening. Have a super great day. And I hope the sun comes down on us soon. Bye-bye.
I'm your host, Christina Margaret. Thanks so much for stopping by. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Goddess Conjurer Podcast and Show.